There is a countdown running in the United States Senate right now.
Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the legal authority that allows American intelligence agencies to collect communications of foreign targets outside the United States, expires this Friday. It is one of the most consequential surveillance powers in the U.S. National Security Toolkit, used to track terrorist networks, foreign state actors, and hostile cyber operations. And according to its Senate GOP, if it lapses, the United States could have a significant gap in foreign intelligence collection right before the World Cup and America's 250th birthday celebration, two events that draw tens of millions of visitors and present some of the highest-profile terrorism targets in years.
Republicans say they have a bipartisan deal. Democrats are blocking the vote. Tonight, we explain why and what is actually at stake. Here is what we are covering today. We explain exactly what Section 702 is in plain English and why both parties have historically supported it. We look at the specific bipartisan deal that Republicans say was agreed to and why Democrats pulled back. We examine the civil liberties argument from the get a warrant faction of the Republican Party itself. We cover what happens operationally if Section 702 lapses with the World Cup underway. And we close with the political calculation on both sides and why this standoff may resolve in the last possible hours before the deadline. To understand the urgency, we need to understand what Section 702 actually does. It is the provision of FISA that allows the NSA and other intelligence agencies to collect the communications of non-U.S. persons located abroad, including emails, phone calls, and messages, without obtaining an individual warrant for each target. It is the backbone of the signals intelligence that underpins counterterrorism operations, tracking of foreign state hacking groups, and monitoring of weapons proliferation networks. It has been renewed repeatedly with bipartisan support since its creation after September 11. On June 5, Tom Cotton posted that he supported President Trump's push to downsize the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, a signal that the intelligence reform debate is active at multiple levels simultaneously. But the more immediate crisis emerged on June 7. According to its Senate GOP, Senator Cotton worked alongside Democratic Senator Warner, House members, and the Trump administration on a bipartisan compromise that included congressional oversight reforms. The deal was described as agreed upon. Then Democrats pulled back. The Republican framing of the situation, as stated by SEC War and its Tom Cotton in an identical statement, is direct. Democrats are choosing to halt action on reauthorization, undermining national security and putting politics ahead of the safety of the American people. At Senate GOP added a specific and alarming warning: if Democrats continue to stonewall FISA and it expires on Friday, the U.S. could have a significant gap in foreign intelligence collection right before the World Cup and America 250. The complication is that Section 702 faces opposition not only from Democrats but from within the Republican conference. According to its Rick Scott, FISA needs real reform to protect Americans, with the explicit demand, get a warrant. That libertarian-adjacent position that intelligence agencies should obtain warrants before collecting Americans' communications incidentally captured under 702 has been a persistent fault line within the GOP. Separately, at Senate GOP posted that one Republican senator will not support restricting the president's war powers authority during Iran negotiations, suggesting the floor dynamics are fluid. The first question most Americans are asking is, what do Democrats actually object to, and is their position reasonable? The short answer is that the dataset does not include a Democratic explanation of their specific objections. The statements from Schumer and Booker this week focus on the broader budget fight, immigration, and the Iran war rather than on FISA specifically. Based on the publicly known context, the Democratic caucus has historically demanded warrant requirements for searches of Americans' data incidentally collected under Section 702, and some members have objected to the broadened scope of the reauthorization's oversight provisions. The irony is that Rick Scott, a Republican, is demanding the same get a warrant protection from the right. The warrant requirement question is where the bipartisan coalition fractures. A second pressing question is what the operational reality of a Section 702 lapse actually looks like in practice. On that front, the timeline matters enormously. Intelligence collection authorized under existing 702 orders does not stop instantly when the authority lapses. Existing certifications remain valid for up to 1 year. What expires is the ability to obtain new certifications and new collection targets.
In a fast-moving threat environment, particularly with the World Cup drawing 1.5 million international visitors to U.S. cities and America 250 celebrations planned across the country, the inability to add new targets to the collection list in real time is a meaningful operational gap.
The intelligence community cannot predict which new threats will emerge, and each day without reauthorization is a day new threats cannot be legally monitored under 702.
According to an SEC warrant at Tom Cotton's coordinated statement, the bipartisan Senate reauthorization strengthens both security and civil liberties by adding new safeguards, increasing transparency, expanding congressional oversight, imposing criminal penalties for misuse, and enhancing protections for Americans' constitutional rights, a framing designed to address the civil liberties objections while maintaining the collection authority.
What do Democrats actually object to in the FISA reauthorization, and is their position reasonable?
Based on publicly known context, Democrats have historically demanded warrant requirements for searches of Americans' data incidentally collected under 702. Some members also object to the scope of the reauthorization's oversight provisions. Notably, Republican Senator Rick Scott is making the same get a warrant demand, suggesting this is a civil liberties question that cuts across party lines rather than a purely partisan obstruction.
What does a Section 702 lapse actually mean operationally? Does intelligence collection just stop? Existing authorized collection under current certifications can continue for up to a year under statute. What lapses is the ability to obtain new collection certifications and add new targets.
In a dynamic threat environment around high-visibility events like the World Cup, the inability to legally authorize new targets in real time is a meaningful operational constraint, even if it is not an immediate total shutdown of existing surveillance. Across the United States, the most immediate practical impact of a Section 702 lapse falls on the cities hosting World Cup matches: Los Angeles, New York, Dallas, San Francisco, Boston, Seattle, Miami, Kansas City, Philadelphia, and Atlanta. These cities are already in their highest security posture in years, with federal coordination involving DHS, FBI, Secret Service, and local law enforcement. A gap in the ability to add new foreign intelligence collection targets in real time does not make those cities unprotected, but it does create a seam in the intelligence picture at exactly the wrong moment. From a homeland security standpoint, the World Cup represents the most complex security challenge since the 2002 Salt Lake City Olympics, multiplied by the simultaneous America 250 celebration on the National Mall. In Washington, the political dynamics of this standoff are being watched closely by the intelligence community itself.
At Tom Cotton's concurrent support for downsizing the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, published earlier this week, suggests the intelligence reform agenda is moving on multiple tracks simultaneously.
Some intelligence community analysts suggest that the ODNI restructuring debate and the FISA lapse threat together represent the most significant period of domestic intelligence policy uncertainty since the post-Snowden reforms of 2013 to 2015. For U.S. allies, particularly the Five Eyes intelligence sharing partners, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, a U.S. Section 702 lapse creates downstream effects. The Five Eyes intelligence sharing framework relies heavily on 702 derived signals intelligence from the U.S. side of the relationship. Allies who share threat data with the U.S. may find their combined picture less complete if U.S. collection authority is impaired, even temporarily. For civil liberties advocates and the broader American public, the debate over Section 702 represents one of the most consequential ongoing tensions in American democracy: the balance between the government's claim that it needs broad surveillance authorities to protect the public and the individual's right not to have their private communications swept up in a net designed for foreign targets. A fair presentation of this story requires taking seriously the concerns that have made Section 702 reauthorization contentious for years, and they are legitimate concerns. The core civil liberties argument is that Section 702, as currently structured, allows the government to search through Americans' communications collected incidentally under the Foreign Targeting Authority without obtaining a warrant, even when those communications are later used in criminal prosecutions. That gap, sometimes called the backdoor search loophole, is the reason why civil libertarians across the political spectrum, from the ACLU on the left to Senator Rick Scott on the libertarian right, have objected to clean reauthorizations. According to its and Rick Scott, the demand is simple: get a warrant. That is not an unreasonable ask in a constitutional democracy. Additionally, Schumer this week characterized the broader Republican legislative agenda as passing a bill that gives more money for Donald Trump, more power for Donald Trump, and nothing to lower costs for working families. While that characterization refers to a separate budget bill, it reflects the Democratic caucus's broader posture that agreeing to Republican national security demands without extracting policy concessions on issues that affect ordinary Americans is politically untenable ahead of midterms. Some analysts suggest the FISA stonewall is leverage, not obstruction, designed to force the kind of warrant reform protections that previous administrations resisted. Here is the detail that should sharpen the stakes. The coordinated statement by SEC War and Sen Cotton was word for word identical, the exact same text posted by two different official handles within minutes of each other.
That level of coordination is not accidental.
It is a signal that the executive branch and Senate leadership are treating this as a crisis, not a negotiation. When the Secretary of War and the Senate's foremost hawk post the same statements simultaneously, the message to the other side is clear: the clock is not a bluff.
Drop your answer in the comments. Do you think Democrats are right to hold out for warrant reform, or is this reckless obstruction at the worst possible moment?
This is one of the sharpest civil liberties versus national security debates in years, and it is happening right now. Tell us where you stand below, and subscribe so you catch the vote when it happens.